relationships are full of antagonism, and generally speaking, there's a feeling of chaos. Hi everybody, my name's Abhinav. I have come from a reasonable distance away to be here, and my sincerest thanks to Eric for having the chance to share my observations with you, and a shout out to Ben and Dan for the nudge. So, enterprise IT. What I'm going to talk about is the idea about innovating from within the enterprise. What it takes for people who work within these departments to be able to create solutions that help make people's lives better, their professional lives, better solutions for end customers, saving money, making more money, making shareholders happier. So enterprise IT, from my experience, and I haven't worked in the enterprise for the last 3 years because I got sick of it and I did something else that's born out of my frustrations, and I'm really enjoying what I do now. But enterprise IT, in my perspective, has always been enterprises that consume and use technology to be able to service and deliver their products to their marketplaces. So they do not create technology, they use it. And so in such an enterprise, which is comprised of thousands of people, complex systems, many members coming together to make a very complicated system, the IT department is the whipping boy of the overall organization. And why? Because they're sitting in amongst a bunch of business units that push them hard to get things done, and they feel like sometimes they need to have a sense of clairvoyance as to be able to tell what is coming down the line and how do we keep up with the pace. So really what we're dealing with is a complicated job. It is not easy. It's full of risk. You can make bad decisions. That notion of fail fast doesn't exist inside the enterprise IT organization. You fail, you break things, and people get very unhappy. You can't just walk away from it and say, yeah, I failed fast, on to the next thing. And it is a place where your morale will erode, your knowledge will erode. You don't get to do things in a creative way. You get to do things in a repeated way. And it is full of antagonism and chaos. And I'm not a very pessimistic person, but I am painting a bleak picture here. But, I'm going to walk you through my contention as to how I think some things can be fixed, and how you might, in fact, see the renaissance of the enterprise developer. And I'd like to give you some abstract notions and then dive into a real-life case study, a 3-year experiment that I was a part of, to try and test and flex the possibilities and to see how you could actually get shit done. Now, I must warn you, whenever I practice this, and I have practiced this a lot, I tend to swear a fair bit because I get very passionate about the subject, so I'm going to tone it down. But if I say the word barnacles, I want you to mentally interpolate the strongest swear word you can at that point in time. So, frameworks within frameworks. Everything around us is a structure or framework. We don't live in completely loose societies. We have cars that have number plates that you got somehow through a structure or a framework. You go and buy fuel for that car, you need money to do that, you've got to earn that money from somewhere. Everything in your life is a framework. And professionally speaking, most of us work with technology frameworks. I would think the audience here is very familiar with software frameworks, layers of abstraction, design patterns, and so on and so forth. Infrastructure frameworks that then house software frameworks, which then deliver something via a network framework, through a security framework to someone who's completely happy with what they see, or maybe not. So technology frameworks. And then social frameworks. People that come together to use the technology to deliver something or to consume the technology. And I don't mean social in the sense that you have to compact your most profound thinking into 140 characters. I mean social in the traditional sense of the word social, in that you, as a person, exist in a social fabric. And you are interdependent upon the people within your social fabric. Everybody who is near you, you depend upon them to do something to facilitate a day in the life of you, personally or professionally. And then, in the enterprise, we have funding frameworks. Barnacles. So, these are like, I mean, going with the organism, biology, technology overlap theme that we started with, these are arterial lines of money that run through, they course through the enterprise organism or the enterprise landscape, and they fund business units. And they have capital delivery programs, and IT feeds off these capital delivery programs to try and get stuff done for business units. And tied closely to funding frameworks are accountability frameworks. Your KPIs. You fundamentally have to get a certain job done. Your job is defined by your KPIs when you're working in an enterprise organization. And if you're lucky, if things go to plan, every quarter, 6 months, 12 months, you might get a review, and you'll see on your KPI checklist, did you meet all the things that you set out to do? And that KPI, or list of KPIs, is proportional and related to directly your funding framework within which you live in. So the money that feeds you and puts food on your plate is basically driving the motivation that you have to get a certain job done. And then you have communication protocols, change control protocols. How do I request a server build from my IT ops guys? I've got to write a specific document, email it to them, and if I get it wrong, then there's going to be a delay, and then we'll have document ping pong going on, death by document perhaps, and maybe it'll take weeks for me to provision something that's pretty simple to get your hands on in the current day in the outside world. You have change control procedures where you've got to get a simple thing done like barnacles. You've got to get a simple thing done like a new CNAME record in a zone file. Just a trivial thing that you need to get done. And you inject yourself into the change control process, and you come out somewhere and you realize you may have checked the wrong box somewhere and you've made a mistake, and it takes 2 weeks to get something super trivial done. These are procedure-driven frameworks, and we live with them every day inside the enterprise. Why? Because they are complicated structures, they are complicated beasts. Everybody has to work together somehow, and everybody relies on this stuff to get the job done. And this is what it yields: overheads and bureaucracy. And that is why I believe that there is an erosion not only of people's morale, but their ability to grow, stay open-minded, create really neat solutions, and to use interesting technology in order to yield really, really good outcomes for business. And even worse than that, excuse my strange syntax here, you'll get this in a second. Speaking of bureaucracy and overheads, you've all been in the situation where you're in this email chain, just name after name of people, and you're passing a certain document around, and it's got version control, and you can't even remember where certain things changed. The vision is getting diluted. You don't know where a certain project is going. It's a complicated document. You've read it a few times, and you're almost at the point of not caring anymore. And at the bottom of this document is a list of stakeholders, those that hold stake. They are good at defending their KPIs. They have delegates. They have a small army of delegates that help them to defend their KPIs. They have agendas to defend. Why? Because their funding framework demands that. And the intersection of the agendas of all the stakeholders in that document, I believe, is related closely to the chance of success of that project. So the larger that intersection is, the more likely that this thing will succeed. What about a behavioral framework? How do people behave in the enterprise? They're pretty risk averse, and they stand their ground, they hold their turf, they say no more often than they say yes. They raise problems more often than they raise solutions. And it's not usually a very collaborative scenario. Maybe I've just worked for the wrong enterprises, I don't know. My contention is that if you were to reorientate social frameworks, and I don't mean Twitter and microblogging and so on, again, I mean social in the traditional sense, funding frameworks, which will then flow into a different way of holding people accountable. And if you allow people to use technology frameworks more creatively, you will be able to create a shift in a behavioral framework within the enterprise. And then you'll find that a team of people will get the job done if they are motivated to do so. I'm not a psychologist or a shrink or anything like this. I'm a technologist who's just made a few observations over the years. And I think ultimately it is the people who are doing the job within the enterprise that can get things done. So let's test the hypothesis. Let's dive in a little more. Laying down some context. So I finished up university in Sydney, and I got a job as a Unix sysadmin, and I lived inside data centers with blinking lights, and I racked machines, I installed operating systems, I tuned databases, I defended the line of security, I learned about a whole lot of things about infrastructure. So I started in the trenches. I did support calls for too many years, and I then went on to leading a team of sysadmins, and then I went on to leading a team of web delivery folks, so developers, business analysts, project managers, infrastructure people, the whole mystery that is behind constructing web-based assets for the enterprise. And I got pretty sick of what I was doing at a particular place, and I executed something in a long-term plan of mine, which was to say goodbye to normal life and go traveling for 12 months. So just before I left, I was given a fantastic opportunity. I was told, hey, you know what, come back. There's an empty seat waiting for you. You can redefine what you do. You don't have to do what you were doing before, because clearly you didn't enjoy it very much, although you supposedly were good at it. No strings attached. And a fool would not take that up. So I had to say, sure, I'll speak to you when I get back. So I found out, I figured out, okay, I'm going to give this a go. So last month of this trip was in Patagonia, and I'm feeling 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and hiking through and climbing these mountains, loving life. And then I remember day one of walking back into this place. It was a telco, by the way. So, and I've gone from mountains, rivers, great Argentine beer, to a fluorescently lit corridor, shades of gray, cubicles, motivational statements and posters on the wall, and barnacles, right? So I was just, I had no idea why I was back. And then something remarkable happened. I met our new CIO. He was sort of my boss. Part of my list of requests to return to work for this organization was that I would report to the CIO, perhaps to a couple of his direct reports, and I would cherry pick my own team to do whatever they needed me to do. So like quiet, under the radar right-hand man. And other things where I work remotely and I work part-time and blah, 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 and all that worked out really well, so pretty happy on that front. And so Mr. CIO, who's a really chilled out guy, a remarkable man, you can meet him at the bar at a pub and you wouldn't know that he wrangles and leads massive organizations. He's just a normal guy who doesn't have an ego the size of a football field. And he just says this, Abhinav, welcome back. You've got an interesting reputation here. You're really frustrated, clearly, by your last job that you were doing here, and you seem to have a fair bit of experience. So how about doing this? Build me 50 web apps of moderate complexity and build them for business in 1 year. So what does that mean? It's like you could say, I want purple elephants to fly into this room right now and start playing trombones. What does that mean? What is 50? Where do you get 50 from? Who is the business, and how did you choose a year-long time span? So all he wanted to do as the new guy was demonstrate this: agility, pragmatism, and execution. Why? Because the IT department was hated universally by the rest of the business, because they would be asking for work to get done, and it would not get done to a level of quality that they were happy with, in a way that it would be delivered, that it was in time and within cost. So the golden triangle: quality, time, cost. Yeah? None of those things were really being struck by that group. So why did he want to do this? He wanted to initially, at a small scale, just show everybody, and I mean business and technologists, everybody, how to get it done. So it's a pretty small challenge, really. So I recalibrated, as I do. I sort of meditated on what he was asking me. I hadn't said yes yet, and I just said to myself, this is what we have to do. Deliver complete apps efficiently and make customers happy. And you can throw away the notion of 50 and 1 year in business and whatever. This became my goal. And so here's how we went about doing it. These are the three things I asked for: the right people, money, and autonomy. So the right people, there were only 4 of us in the first year. 4 people to build 50 web apps. I believe in running small teams. I think large teams will make things confusing and communication gets difficult and so on. People are excellent. I believe in people doing a good job if you put them in the right place. But a smaller team has a really high chance of success. We all hate the system. And we believe it can be fixed. So we're opinionated optimists. And this is the renaissance of the enterprise developer. Find people like this in an organization. We're articulate on a variety of subjects. So I can have a chat with a business person about a capitalization strategy that they have on a specific program of delivery. And then I can walk over and I can talk to a bunch of developers about some problem they're having with beach research. And in the middle, I can talk to the barista about the ultimate temperature for latte foam, if I want to. These are the kind of people that you need on board. We're practiced hackers outside of our day jobs. Okay? And why is this important? Because here's what happens. Every morning you walk into your enterprise developer role, and I walk through the door, and I strap on my tool belt, and I've got here a tool that's really blunt. It used to be awesome back in the day, but we're still using it. It isn't awesome anymore, and it's blunt, and I keep bashing it against the thing that I'm meant to use it for, and it kind of gets the job done, but I'm not satisfied with it. Put that thing back there. I've got this tool here. It's really shiny, it's unused. Someone bought it. It's sitting in my tool belt, but nobody knows what it does. Someone paid a lot of money for it, and it sits on the shelf, basically. I'll put that one back there. And then I've got this secret little tool in my tool belt that nobody knows that I have. I snuck it through the door. Why? Because it helps me get my job done. But I'd get in trouble if I told anyone that I have it inside of this organization. I'm speaking generically, but others have spoken specifically about technology that makes its way into the enterprise and allows people to get their job done. So knowing what to use is really important. And I think that if you give enterprise developers the space to be open-minded and assess what options they have, you will find that indeed they will innovate. And indeed there will be a renaissance of the enterprise developer. And most importantly, we're all shit scared. What do you mean 50 web apps in 1 year? Who's done that sort of thing before, you know? We all work in this place. We know how impossible this is. This is nonsense. What are you talking about? And this is totally normal. And you know the great thing about this? The people, the 4 of us, including myself, we're not nimble ninjas, and we're not heroic hipsters, and we're not engineering rock stars. We are just normal people inside of an enterprise IT department who understand the limitations of the company we work with, the limitations of the people we work with, the system we're working within, and how to work it in order to make it better. Let's talk about our customers. They too hate the system, and they need it to be fixed. So there's a magic complementary relationship there. We hate the system, and we believe we can fix it. They're demanding and they're upset. Why? Because they need to be demanding, right? So many technologists complain about the fact that their business counterparts don't give them any notice or give them any information about what they need to get done in a timely way so that they can plan, project, capacity plan, deliver, yield. What do they know about what's coming down the line? I mean, are they clairvoyants as well? Maybe they have a plan, but their plan changes too, just as much as your plan does as a technologist. So you have to empathize with them. You know, they are demanding because they're under pressure as well, and they have that KPI set beside them, and they've got to put food on the plate. So they go with what they know. And they're upset because IT does not deliver, as I mentioned before. And interestingly, when you tear open the covers, you see that there are motivated, adaptable, and collaborative people. And you know what? The interesting thing is that they are of the same mold as we are as technologists. We are ultimately the same kind of people, but with different skill sets. Different KPIs, different jobs, trying to come together and clashing fundamentally in the way we do things. So money, something else I asked for, completely funded by our CIO for 1 year. And what that meant is that the business were not asked to pay a single cent for any of our work for the year. So they didn't pay a cent for any of the code, any of the infrastructure, any of the maintenance, any of the ancillary stuff. Nothing. They just got solutions when they asked for them. And yes, there is a catch. We'll come to it. And autonomy, this is really important. So because we were active hackers outside of our day jobs, we knew all the limitations we were working within. We needed to move fast. We did not need technology to be our worst enemy. We needed to use it appropriately. So we've designed and built our own infrastructure for the sake of control and speed. We automated absolutely everything around us. Does anybody know what dry means? Don't repeat yourself. If you do one thing 2 times, there should be a little flashing light. If you've done it 3 times, there should be a very large flashing light going off saying, you are repeating yourself. You need to modularize, create a service, let your other apps consume that service, one place to maintain it, one place for it to break, one place to fix it. You can automate it, you can script it, you can do many things to set up a situation where you simply don't repeat yourself. And deploy fast and frequently. You try doing this inside of an enterprise IT department where a deployment lifecycle, I think we heard earlier, is 45 days, and we're really pleased with the 45-day time span. How can you sustain something like that when I've got to roll out 50 of these things in a year? So deploy fast and frequently for the sake of efficiency. On that note, if your customers can see some form and function on day 0 at the outset of a journey together, they will be so pleased with you. You will totally start on the right foot. And it is so possible within the enterprise. So here's an interesting thing. We stipulated when we defined our offering that whatever apps we were going to build, they would only take 4 weeks to deliver. Here comes that moderate complexity piece. What does that mean? What is moderately complicated? So we kind of arbitrarily came up with this number, or semi-arbitrarily came up with this number. We felt we could build things of real worth and value within 3 months, but we chopped that down to 4 weeks, and you'll see why in a second. You could say to people, yeah, you can come back for more iterations of work, so you can do multi-phased work, but the first cut is 4 weeks, and you should walk away. We should shake hands, and you will have in your hands a complete app, and you will be a happy customer, going back to my motivation earlier. So you limit scope by doing this. You don't build public-facing apps because egg on your face publicly is really, really not the same thing as egg on your face internally. Pretty simple. Limit scope again. Minimal integration, apart from, on day 1, removing all identity headache from our situation by allowing us to do integrated authentication and authorization with our identity stores within the organization. We offered that on day 1. Apart from that, we didn't want to integrate with any other downstream system. And I know that's heresy, perhaps, in this audience, because integration, data, APIs, that's what it's all about, right? Barnacles. How many enterprises actually have really, really well thought out APIs within? Do you know the kind of integration we would be doing? It's FTP and CSV. And I'm not making this up. How many of you think that CSVs over FTP really make the enterprise world go around? You know, that is the truth. From the coalface. So what we said was, I'm sorry, no integration. Unless you can give us a really shiny API. I'm not writing an interface contract document. I just want to consume the API. I can figure it out. I can reverse engineer this thing. I'm smart. Outside of my day job, I'm integrating with all sorts of APIs. So this is why we stated this on the get-go. And this is really important. Set the motivation. Can that business person who's asking you to do a certain job bring you on board and say, hey, here's why I'm trying to do this thing. Can your little team of people come together and say, I get this, I really understand, I believe in this thing. It will make someone's life better, we will make more money, we will save money, shareholders will be happy, customers will be happy, or, hey, this is quite cool, it could really revolutionize the way that people are using the tech that we build. So set the motivation, it's really important. If you don't have passion for what you're doing, why are you doing it? One point of contact, one-on-one, all the way. For a short, fast stint, you have a developer and a business person joined at the hip, no project managers, no business analysts, nothing. Why? Because the developer is a polymath. They're capable of having a conversation on a number of contexts with the business person. And they should be able to. And this is where the renaissance lies. This is how people can actually innovate within the enterprise, by motivating and instilling this notion of being able to hold a conversation at a number of different levels and having an open mind as to how to find solutions. And the interesting thing here is that the business person understands that actually the developer is a pretty smart guy, and I might learn something from them. Maybe. And this leads to transparency and accountability too. Rigorous, frequent testing. Boom. This is so important. How many enterprise projects do you see of the larger scale out there? Remember, all these things are being put in place to try and teach everybody, hey, consider this as an option. How many enterprise projects do you see out there with a few-week testing cycle shunted at the end of their delivery? Yeah? And then you're coding like crazy, testing maybe within your own systems, on your own laptop, whatever you do, if you use unit testing. And if you even know what TDD is. And you start talking to the business and they say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to eat into that testing cycle in terms of our Gantt chart timeline, the magic chart, because the features matter more to us than the testing cycle. And how irritating is that? Why do we keep having conversations like that? Why not test on day zero? And we instilled this approach into our customers' thinking. And this is the renaissance of the enterprise business person, to allow them to allow you as a technologist to do your job really well. It's a shift in behavior. This is the behavioral framework that I was talking about. Feature and bug tracking, pretty obvious. Templated documents, not too much overhead, get on with it. And this creates a bombardment of an event stream of information about where the project is up to. You have complete immersion. And here's the catch, we could refuse to do the work. And what would happen in this case? The business person would walk away and say, they refused, and it used to be mostly because we couldn't deliver what they wanted in 4 weeks. They would say, okay, guess what? If I don't go to these guys, I go to the other guys, and I have to wait for 3 months for an estimate, and I have to wait for 6 months to get it started, and by then I've changed my mind about what I wanted in the first place, and by the time they've started, I'm going to start raising change control stuff, and then some change managers going into therapy, and then project managers are going to create all sorts of new Gantt charts, and then a year later I'll get something that doesn't resemble what I wanted. So what I'll do is I'll descope a lot of things, and I'll give them the 3 things I want to get done, and they reckon they can do that in 4 weeks. In fact, even if it took 6 weeks to do it, we would recognize that this person understood the concept of what we were trying to do, and we would get on with it. Simple as that. So that's where the 4-week iteration thing came from. It's slightly artificial, but it was meant to push people with this is done for free for you. It was meant to push our customers into the sense of understanding that, these guys have a hard job. Allow them to digest small chunks of work and get on with it. So examples, in terms of doing these iterated jobs that we were doing for customers, after 4 iterations we came through with a mini CRM for someone, and our work accelerated their strategic program that we didn't even know about. And that landed us in a lot of trouble, but that's okay. So the climax was an identity management piece, and I'm running out of time a little bit, and I can only really talk about identity management while drinking, so let's talk about that over a beer. So what happened to us? We eroded, mutated, and diluted, and died. Why? Because the people around us changed, people started exploiting what we were doing, and then we turned into this random SWAT team that just got thrown into things saying, hey, you guys have demonstrated that you can do stuff quickly. do this quickly. But they didn't give us the framework that we stipulated we needed. And therefore we failed in the end. But I do believe that that is the representation of, it's the skunk work story that you may have heard of before, but I hope I've articulated it in a way which represents the complete approach from both the renaissance of the developer and the business person in order to create the idea of innovation within the enterprise. So set the motivation and get on with it. Thank you.